Hey everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of the 5.1 to 5.4 review for Foundations of Problem Solving. So I'm on screen 8. It asks us to find the x and y intercepts of the equation 6x minus y equals 18. Well, we know to find an x-intercept that we're going to need to plug in 0 for y, which really means if I take this equation, I can just get rid of the y that's there. And I would have 6x is equal to 18. So if I divide both sides by 6, those cancel, and I get that x is equal to 3. So I know that my x-intercept then is the point 3, 0. Always remember to write your x and y intercepts as coordinate points. So if we take a look at part 2 then, to find the y-intercept, we know that that means plug in x equals 0. So for this x value right here, if we were to plug in 0 and this whole thing would cancel, we'd be left with negative y is equal to 18. Now don't lose that negative sign. It's going to be really important because we have to remember there's actually a negative 1 in front of there. And so when we go to solve this, if we divide both sides by negative 1, we get that y is equal to negative 18. And so our coordinate point is 0, negative 18. Anytime we have an equation that's in standard form, finding the x and y intercepts is super easy. So that's why that's what we did here. Okay, for this one, we need to graph the line that's given. So we're told y equals negative 2 over 3x plus 8. Hopefully you can recognize right away that that is slope-intercept form, which means it gives us two things, the slope and the y-intercept. So we're given that the slope is negative 2 over 3. And that the b value is 8. That's our y-intercept, which means our starting point is the point 0.08. So on your graph, that is where you're going to put your first dot. And then we're going to use our slope, which is down 2 and to the right 3. So our next coordinate point will be right there. And I'm going to do it again, down 2 to the right 3, down 2 to the right 3. And then I can use my line tool here to draw my line through these points. And I always like to then use the pencil also to draw arrows because I know that this line goes on for forever. It's not just the points that I drew on there. And that's really important because the directions here say to show all possible solutions. So we have to remember those arrows. All right, for the next one, we're still graphing linear functions, but now if we look at this one is not in slope-intercept form. This is point-slope form. So we're given y equals 3 times x plus 9 minus 6. So we know for sure that the slope is 3, because that's what's in front of the parentheses. That's what's being multiplied in front. And now we need to figure out what our starting point is. So we need to take the opposite of what's in the parentheses, so negative 9, and then take what's on the outside of the parentheses, which is negative 6. So that's actually going to be our starting point for this line, negative 9, negative 6. And then we're going to use our slope, which is 3 over 1. Since it's positive, we're going to go up and to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. And I always like to fill in as many points as possible on my graph so that I can get a really good picture of what my line looks like. Oh, that's not the straightest line ever. How about... Oh, that's not much better, but you get the idea. And then draw your arrows to show that it goes on for forever. All right, now this one is in standard form. So just like we did a couple slides ago, we need to find the x and the y intercepts. So in order to find the x-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for y. So we're going to end up getting negative 20x is equal to 40. And when we divide both sides by negative 20, we get x is equal to negative 2. So our x-intercept is the point negative 2, 0. So that's going to be right here on our graph. And then if we want to find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for x. So the first part goes away, and we're left with 8y is equal to 40. So if I divide both sides by 8, I can get y is equal to 5. And so that's the point 0.05 for our y-intercept. And then I'm going to use my line tool to connect my dots, and then use the pencil to draw my arrows and show that this goes on for forever. When it's the x and the y-intercept, it's only those 2 points. When the equation's in standard form, it's just those 2 points that you have to show on your graph, and you're good to go. All right, then here we've got y equals negative 1. Now you'll notice this is not any of the forms that we've been talking about, because this one only has one variable. It only has a y. So if we start to think about what that might look like if we were to make a table, it means that every single y value is going to be negative 1, regardless of what the x value is that you pick. So for example, I could pick negative 5, I could pick 0, I could pick 2. It doesn't matter what x values I pick. The y value is always going to be negative 1. So that would be right here, right here, right here. Anything I want that has a y value of negative 1, which means this is going to end up being a horizontal line through negative 1. And then here we notice this is sort of similar, except that this one only gives us x values. They're telling us that the x value has to be negative 3, regardless of what you pick for the y value. So for example, I could pick negative 3, negative 1. I could pick negative 3, 2. I could pick negative 3, 7. Doesn't matter what the y value is, as long as the x value is negative 3. So negative 3, negative 1 would be right here. Negative 3, 2. Negative 3, 7. What I'm noticing then is that anything along this vertical line here is going to have an x value of negative 3. All right, last but not least, we've got this word problem. You sell t-shirts for $17 each and tumblers with the Macy's logo for $34 each. You make $170. Now, Miss J made an error here when she made this problem, so please correct this equation. It should be 17x plus 34y is equal to 170. So I am sorry about that. That was a typo on my part, but it might change what your problem is. So if you want to pause and try the problem again, and then you can press play to watch and get the final answer. So we notice that this is in standard form, which means I'm going to find the x and the y-intercepts in order to make my graph. So to find the x-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So I know that that's going to be 17x equals 170. And when I divide both sides by 17, I'm going to get that x is equal to 10, which means my x-intercept is the point 10, 0. So I'm going to go ahead and put that along my x-axis right here. And then for the y value, the y-intercept, excuse me, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So I'm going to get 34y is equal to 170. And when I divide both sides by 34, I get y is equal to 5. So my y-intercept is the point 0.05. And then I'm going to use my line tool to go ahead and draw my line. So I'm going to connect these 2 points. Now on this one, we actually don't go past the intercepts and draw arrows, because on this one, this is a real world problem, and so we can't have negative values here because the x and the y variable actually stand for something. So that's why this is actually going to be really important for you to pay attention to. It even says right here to label your axes. So don't forget to do that on this problem. Now, in order to do that, we need to look a little bit more closely at this problem. So it says that you sell t-shirts for $17 each. If we notice, the 17 is by the X, which means the X variable has to have something to do with the t-shirts, right? And we know how much money we made, which means that the X variable, the thing that we don't know, is how many t-shirts we actually sold. So the X variable and the label that I want here is the number of t-shirts sold. That's the thing that I don't know about the X, right? The X variable is the number of t-shirts sold. And then if we think about the Y variable, well, the Y variable has this 34 attached to it. And we know that the tumblers with the Manis logo were $34 each. That was the price, which means the Y must be the number of tumblers sold. And there we go. If you have any questions about what I went over in the video, please feel free to reach out to your foundations teacher or your Math 1 teacher. We are all here to help and support you, and we want you guys to be successful if you're taking this summative assessment next week. And even if you're not taking the summative assessment, we still want to make sure that you guys are following along with everything, that you're understanding, and that you're able to learn to the best of your abilities. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for watching.